Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this Grunberg and RCK webinar regarding business rates even following a change in government. I'm Peter McMahon. I'm one of the partners here at Grunberg & Co, and I'm delighted to be joined by Shauna and Bradley from RCK, who are going to be discussing what may or may not happen in the next few months and years under the new Labour government. If you have any questions, please feel free to pop them in the Q&A and we'll deal with those at the end of the presentation. And without further ado, I will hand you over to Shauna.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Peter. Thank you so much. So good afternoon, good morning, I should say, everyone. We're not quite there yet. Thank you for joining our co-hosted webinar today. And of course, thank you so much to our business partners, Grunberg, for the opportunity. We really appreciate it. So the webinar today will explore what does a change in government mean for business rates. So I'm just going to talk and walk you through the agenda for today's webinar. So firstly, we will, of course, do an introduction to the webinar and who RCK are, followed by an introduction to business rates, how a change in government can impact business rates, what does a change in government mean for you, business rates reliefs that are available, business rates property types to see if any are applicable, business rates scope of services, so you can see the process that it would undertake working with RCK, a successful case study, our contact details, and of course, we will finish with the Q&A. So as Peter explained, if you do have any questions, please put them in the chat function and we will be able to answer as many as possible at the end of the webinar. So just to give you an introduction to both myself and Bradley, so I'm Shauna McLean, Senior Commercial Manager at RCK. I'm very fortunate enough to lead and manage a team in our Innovation Tax Department. And with me joining us today, we have Bradley Westlake, who's Head of Business Rates. Bradley has got extensive experience working within this specific sector. He's previously worked directly with two councils, Crawley and Thurrock, where he learned the extensive legislation that the councils put together. He also has worked for Cushman & Wakefield, which actually happens to be the second largest real estate property company globally. I think as well, Bradley, you saved clients up to circa 50 mil in your time there. So just to give you a bit of a background onto who RCK are and what we do. So RCK are a leading financial consultancy based in the heart of London, and we offer a range of tax savings services to our clients from a range of different industries and sectors. Within RCK, we have, of course, our bulletproof compliance team, which has, ex-HMRC tax inspectors, lawyers, and of course, chartered accountants. We also work on a contingency fee basis, so our clients do only pay upon success. Across the board, we've got a team of extremely qualified professionals that work here at RCK that either have the academic or vocational understanding and knowledge of the products that we provide. And finally, we have Lord Philip Hammond, the former Chancellor of the Exchequer, who came on board as a senior advisor at RCK back in June of 23. And Lord Hammond has been a fantastic asset with advising on corporate strategy and, of course, the ever-changing tax landscape. So just to give you an update on regards to our business rates success to date with the business rates relief product that we provide. So this came out, I believe, in summer of 2023. So we haven't launched it too long ago. And to date, we've supported over 370 clients, generated savings of circa up to 3 mil, which works out at roughly around £20,000 a saving per client. So as you can see, a super lucrative scheme that we've done very well within a short period of time. We just need to raise more awareness, to see if there are any clients out there that aren't currently claiming the reliefs that could be, available to them. Hence the webinar today. So without further ado, I'm now going to pass over to Bradley, who will discuss business rates in greater detail.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that, Shauna. So yes, an introduction to business rates. Now, I imagine that everybody that is involved with the running of or owning of a business will appreciate the, tax burden that business rates brings. So it's a tax that is levied on pretty much every single commercial property. It raises around £29 billion of revenue for the government, and it's collected at about a 95% collection rate. So it's huge for the government, and you'll probably find that it tends to be around about your third highest outgoing as a firm. Now, the great thing about business rates is it's one of the only taxes that's subjective. So you can appeal your business rates. You know, there's nothing to stop people from doing that. Now, the system itself is pretty complex, and hence why advisors such as ourselves exist in the market. But the whole point around this and around the work that we do is an education piece to make sure that people are aware that this is a subjective tax that can be challenged and should be challenged to make sure that what you are paying is correct. Now, business rates itself, what do you get for it? A lot of people say, well, with my council tax, I get the bins collected. With business rates, unfortunately, you don't get anything directly. However, it goes towards funding your public services in your particular local council. So the government collects all the money in and they divvy it up accordingly to each individual council. Now, how do they work out how much you pay? Every single property has something called a rateable value. This is based on a hypothetical open market net effective rent as at a particular date in time. Now, what that means in layman terms is how much is that property worth on a particular date if it was let to somebody. The government, central government, then sets a multiplier. This is linked to CPI inflation, so it increases each year. You multiply the two figures together, and that spits out a value for what you should be paying each year. And then the council collects it, very similar to how you'd pay your council tax bills. So you'd pay it in 10 or 12 instalments, and that's paid over a monthly basis. So that's a brief introduction to business rates themselves. And we'll move on to the sort of the main crux of today's session, really. And what does a Labour government, or what does a change to a Labour government mean for business rates? And I think the biggest headline that we saw in the sort of lead up to the election with regards to business rates was Labour's promises to replace the business rate system. Now, what does that actually mean? So like I've mentioned, business rates is a highly efficient, highly collected tax that governments have relied on for a significant period of time. Making promises like this isn't new with business rates. We've seen manifestos and headlines from successive governments for some time now, all promising reforms to the business rate system. So we always have to ask ourselves the question, how is this going to be different? You know, how are Labour actually going to make a change to a seriously entrenched system? Now, the first thing they have mentioned is that they're going to have to create something which is completely revenue neutral. So they're going to have to find another way of collecting that £29 billion at such a high collection rate. And that in itself is a huge challenge, because who do you bill instead? If you do not bill the occupiers, do you bill the landowners? Do you bill the landlords? Do you bill tenants? You know, who's responsible for ensuring that that tax continues to be paid and collected? One of the other big takeaways that we've seen is that Labour have mentioned that the new system is going to assist in levelling the playing field between the high street and online retail. And consultations have taken place over the last few years from successive governments to try and find either some sort of online sales tax which benefits the high street and enables them to trade effectively, but also to still make sure that the online retailers and the e-commerce companies are still making sure that they're paying a correct tax amount. So what does this mean? What do we know is going to happen already? We already know that Labour intends to remove the VAT break, which has been awarded to private schools and to aid state education. However, it is likely that they will also be removing the 80% mandatory relief that comes along with it. Now, we don't know exactly how far that's going to extend, because currently at the moment, it's not only private schools that receive that relief, it's also essentially any school that isn't run by the local authority. So free schools, trusts, academies, etc., all are in receipt of this relief, as well as other educational bodies. So it's a big statement to say that 80% relief will be removed from that entire sector, because, like you say, we've got to revert back always to the idea that this is supposed to be revenue neutral. Any change needs to be revenue neutral. So if you're charging an entire sector 80% more, who benefits from the 80% reduction? And these are the things we've got to think about. These are the things that have got to be weighed up. Now, Labour have advised that all of these changes to the business rate system are going to provide better incentivised investment, tackle the empty property issue, and to support entrepreneurship. Now, one thing I touched on there was talking about tackling the empty property issue that we have at the moment. Now, for a significant amount of years, and especially even from my time when I was working for local authorities, there are loopholes that exist in the system with regards to empty properties. We are aware that the government have tried to change things. In the most recent budget, there were changes made to the reliefs that empty properties can receive. And the idea behind this and the grand scheme is to ensure that landlords don't have empty properties. It's to ensure that investment happens, that businesses start to take these units that are sat empty for years and years, and that there are no loopholes for the landlords to be able to use for a property to just be able to sit there, for an asset just to sit there. Now, oh, sorry, I want to go back. Sorry. So we know that they've consulted, and we know that they've intended to increase or to reduce, the loopholes that are there. The discussions that have been taking place surrounding these empty properties is to have 100% relief for a period of time, and then you would pay 100% rates from that point. We then move on to retail properties. I mean, I've touched upon it already earlier, but one of the biggest issues I think we're facing at the minute within property is what happens with the high street. And anybody can tell by walking down their local high street that there's been a significant decline over the years. There are, British brands that are sort of long-standing brands that have, gone out of business, leaving the high streets empty, leaving shopping centres empty. And there's a big issue on the government's hands to try and revitalise and re-energise that sector in entirety. Now, currently, those properties are all in receipt of 75% relief. And that's been a hangover from mainly COVID, but it's actually existed since 2017, this particular relief. But there's something coming to the head now, really. The Labour government have got to understand, what do they do with this relief? Can it continue? Can it continue for this many years at 75%? At some point, we feel that eventually that relief has to be removed or reduced. But because we've now had high street businesses that have been reliant on paying a massively reduced amount in business rates for so long, how do you then reintroduce them to, paying a higher amount? Do we look at the current small business rates relief scheme, which benefits those properties which have a rateable value of under £12,000? And they currently pay nothing, but do you increase that amount? The rules around small business rates relief they're great for your regions and your out of town shopping, but as soon as you get into your sort of local high street, it's highly likely that the rateable values are significantly higher than £12,000. So they're not receiving any sort of benefit from that either. One of the biggest issues that you've got with regards to changing things within business rates, it is all very much entrenched in legislation. You'd have to make serious legislation or legislative changes if you wanted to amend the system and fix what some call as something which just simply isn't fit for the 21st century. Now, what we were hoping to see was reference to business rates in the King's Speech recently. However, we didn't see anything to suggest that there are any large-scale legislative changes coming for business rates. And it really feels within the industry that the government have simply kicked this into the long grass. It was a bit of a headline at the very beginning in the manifesto, but we are yet to see any real pledges to any real changes to the business rate system. And I think it's quite important for us to have a quick look on these reliefs that currently exist at the moment, because I've slightly touched on a few of them. So like I've mentioned before, at the moment, all retail, hospitality and leisure properties should be in receipt of 75% relief. And for the high street, there's more of an explanation on the small business rates relief scheme. Will the government make changes to either of these schemes coming up in the future? It's highly likely. I think a lot of the talk in the industry appears to be at the moment that whilst the retail, hospitality and leisure relief may come down, we will see these tapered scales for small business rates relief increase. To go back to the, to Labour's promises of, providing better incentivised investment and support entrepreneurship, to really revitalise the high street as we see it. I've already touched upon the empty rates relief as well. So currently, if you have industrial properties, it's 100% for 6 months and 3 months for all other properties. As mentioned, there are many loopholes that exist, which are looking to be closed. So what do Labour do with regards to the current system on that? Do they extend relief for a longer period to help and assist landlords to retrofit their properties, to improve their properties, to entice tenants into the areas? It's all very much open at the moment. And we look at the property types that business rates can affect. Now, I mentioned that pretty much every single property type pays an amount of business rates, and it's very much correct. Agricultural properties are pretty much the only properties that don't have a business rates liability. But I've personally dealt with, and you will see high rateable values for restaurants to race courses, hotels, offices, holiday parks, care homes. There's a wide variety of businesses out there that are paying business rates. And I just think it's extremely important to have these reviewed, to have these looked at, to make sure that what you're paying is exactly correct. And then looking at what our scope of services is from RCK, I think the very first thing that we always look at, and I sort of touched upon it at the very beginning in my introduction, business rates is related to the rent you pay. So we always have a look at what your rents are, if it's a leasehold property. So we'll have a look at that rent, we'll look at the net effective, so we're looking at things like your rent freeze, your break periods, any capital contributions for a leasehold property. For a freehold property, we have a sort of deeper look into the comparable properties within the local area to ensure that the pool of properties that the valuation office have chosen for that valuation is correct. Once we've looked at that, we'll identify any opportunities that currently exist. So we'll do that by collating all of the various pieces of information, so your rent details. We'll look at floor plans. So that moves on to our next detailed analysis part. When we look at floor plans, we are surveying the entire property. The square footage, the exact square footage has a direct impact on what you pay for your business rates. So even if you were to reduce 10 square meters, for example, or if you had, if you had part of a property which was assessed as an office, but actually it was a store or it was out of action, then again, that has a direct impact on what you pay on your business rates. We also look at the physical specifications of the property. So for an office, for example, if you've got air conditioning, raised floors, suspended ceilings, that all increases your rates. And obviously, if you don't have any of those things, there's the opportunity to decrease what you pay. For warehouses, it's things like CCTV, fire protection, your eaves heights, how many roller shutter doors you might have. But again, depending on what you have and what you don't have, has a direct impact on what it is that you pay. Once we take all of that information, we collate that and send all of our representations through to the valuation office. Now, they're a branch of HMRC, and for anybody that has obviously dealt with HMRC before, it can be a bit of a tricky beast to navigate.
I could certainly vouch that they are not a pleasure to deal with at times. Yeah.
So yeah, it's the valuation office are no different. So what we do is we formally put together all the representations in something which is relatively easy for the valuation office to read and respond to. We then take on all of the negotiation with the valuation office, with the idea of hopefully sitting in front of a surveyor from their perspective and ensure that everything is valued correctly. And we even take things through to a valuation tribunal. It's a third-party tribunal, and RCK provides representation at that stage as well. So that's pretty much our scope of services. That's what we look to do. And we've got a quick case study here. And the reason, well, it was a hospitality client. They weren't in the receipt of relief. And I think it was about a 6-week turnaround. We managed to secure £500,000 in savings for them. And one of the reasons why I chose this case study was going back to the 75% retail hospitality and leisure relief which exists at the moment. Now, currently, there is no scope for this relief in 2025. However, I would imagine the government would probably extend it. But the reason why I think it's so important, especially for people that are in this sector, to check their business rates, is because at some point this relief will no longer exist. And you will have had the benefit of receiving significant amounts of relief for 4 or 5 years now. But at some point that will flip, and there will be a time when your rates could be going up from, we'll take this case, for example, if the relief didn't continue next year, suddenly their liability is going to be £500,000 higher in that year. And I just think it's extremely important to just have just have it checked. It's especially it could be that you've been overpaying for some time, or it could be that the rates are spot on, but it's just having that peace of mind and knowing that it's been reviewed and we know that we're on the right track. We know that we're on the right course and there's no hidden demons coming out to sort of impact us going forward from that perspective. But that's pretty much sort of it from our introduction in terms of what a Labour government might look like on business rates. I'll hand back over to Shauna.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you so much, Bradley. So obviously, as you said, Bradley, just to echo what you said as well, with the business rates relief scheme that we offer here, it's a free health check. Like Bradley said, if we can do something and potentially offer a reduction, amazing. And if we can't and you're paying what you should be, amazing, but it does cost nothing for us to have a look. So I just wanted to reiterate that as well. So we're just going to have a look at the chat function just to see if there are any questions for us. Let's have a look.
I think there's one come through now.
Oh, yeah.
Can business rate savings be backdated and how are the savings realised? I think that's quite a good question, and I think it highlights the importance of getting in contact. I don't know who wants to field that question.
Yeah, I can tell you. I want to say business rate savings typically are backdated to the 1st of April 2023.
Yeah.
And the savings are realised. So at this stage, you are looking at refunds for overpayments and a reduction in future year liability until 2026.
Yeah, I hope it doesn't all seem as doomy and gloomy as possibly it could do. I think the key thing is, whilst there are these reliefs here, people should be getting in contact to make sure they're paying the right amount. I think one question for you guys is, is there any downside of a client possibly getting in contact? Could for example, their rates go up, or, certainly we've not had any experience of that and engaging you when clients have engaged you, and it's all been very positive. But I don't know if that could be a problem. I've never seen it myself. I don't know if you two have.
Yeah, it's a great question. So I, touch wood, in the sort of 12 years of doing this, have never had that issue before. So no, there's no real downside into having a look at it, because the worst that we could say to anybody is we could do all the initial work, we could do the surveys, and we could come back and say, actually, would you know what? This could be slightly undercooked by the valuation office. And we would very much make any individual client aware at that stage, and then from there, it goes no further. We're not.
Yeah.
Nobody wins if something is submitted
Exactly.
with a potential chance for an increase. So I think we can very much tell from an early stage whether or not there is the potential for any increases going forward. And at that point, I think it's just the clear communication to the client to very much say, look, there are some dangers here. There could be some pitfalls here. Let's just keep our head sort of well below the.
I think as well, looking at the relatively short space of time, the figures in the slide there, Bradley, as well, there are a lot of cases where the people are paying the wrong amount and overpaying, and I think that's the key thing. We've just had
Another
question.
question.
So how long does the process take with RCK and the valuation office? And how does RCK invoice? Is it across the listing period, or can it be year on year? And what is the typical reduction percentage? Okay, a few questions there.
Yeah, I think so.
You want to deal with them one by one? So how long have you got the questions there, Bradley? Or do you want me to read them back?
So with regards to the first question, how long does the process take? So we're currently within the 3-year rating list at the moment. So everything should be settled within that 3 years. Now, any submissions that are sort of done by RCK tend to take anywhere between 4 months and a year. The process between RCK and yourselves as the client realistically takes no more than an hour of your time. It's very quick, and I tend to say to most clients, look, you can be as involved as you want. You can literally be there every step of the way, or you can say, do you know what, Bradley, take it off my hands. I've got a busy day job. Just come back to me when you know that there's some savings there. So it's very much sort of very client dependent on that one. And then for the other two, Shauna, did you want to tackle those, or
which ones is it now? You go ahead. You answer.
Yeah. So with regards to our invoicing and our billing, typically, because the savings are realised for a 3-year period, we bill on a percentage of savings over that 3-year period. Now, take right now for an example, it's probably quite good. At this stage, it's likely with any business rates reductions that you're getting refund plus reduction in future year liability as well. And our typical reduction percentage, it's always quite hard to put a pin on it. There are various cases, like you could get up to 75% relief off if you've got particular reliefs, or charitable relief is at 80%, or there are varied, but I would say most cases with the valuation office, you're looking at somewhere between 10 and 20% of an average reduction.
Okay. Well, I hope that's answered all of those.
Yes. Unless there's any more.
Any more questions from anybody?
No. Okay, I think that's it. What I will say is, if anyone leaves and thinks, oh my gosh, I should have asked that question, do get in touch with us, either RCK or anyone here at Grunberg & Co, and we can point you in the right direction. Thank you, Bradley and Shauna, for very detailed and sort of a little bit crystal ball time. But let's see if some of those predictions are right. I hope some of them certainly aren't right, but we never know. So thank you everyone for joining. As I say, if you've got any questions, please feel free following up, and have a great day.
Thank you
so much. Thank you
very much. Bye.
Bye.